Hey, welcome. So usually when a company wants to raise a whole lot of money, they go public, right? Which is called an IPO, an initial public offering. Lately though, a lot of companies have been going public using a different, newer methodology called SPACs, which stand for Special Purpose Acquisition Companies. What are SPACs? Who's used them? Why have they used them? What are some of the pros and cons? How do they actually work? That's what we'll talk about in today's episode. I'm Deepak. I'm a CTO and help founders build and grow their companies. In these Deep Talk series, we focus on some of the biggest companies today, how do they make money, and what do they do to become the companies they are. Today's episode, because there's been so much activity around investments in newer vehicles of investments and raising capital, we'll be focusing on SPACs. While SPACs have existed for decades, they've only become really popular in the last couple of years. For example, in 2019, about 20% of the IPOs that happened via SPACs, and in 2020 so far, about 38% of the IPOs that have happened using SPACs. Till halfway through the year, so till July 2020, SPACs together had raised around $19 billion collectively. That's pretty sizable money. And about 112 IPOs have happened in 2020 using SPACs. So it looks like the boom or the interest in SPACs is kind of here to stay. So who has used SPAC to go public? Well, I'll give you two or three big names. Virgin Galactic, so Richard Branson's space company that aims to send space tourists to the stratosphere so that they could, look at Earth from top down, I guess. And DraftKings, the fantasy sports site, has also, both of these have used SPACs to become public companies. Another one is Nikola, the energy truck company rather. And even former House Speaker Paul Ryan has his own SPAC. So let's talk about what they are and the inner workings of a SPAC, and then we'll talk about how SPACs actually take another company public. SPACs, straightforward, is just a company that is going public to raise funds with the sole purpose of acquiring another company. It wants to acquire another company to take that company public. That's its entire job. It has no product that it's selling. It has none of that. It's going to an IPO, raising a whole lot of money, holding on to that cash to then purchase and take another private company public. So SPAC is usually started by a founding sponsor, a founding company which is called a sponsor that starts it. Anybody could be a sponsor, anybody could start their own SPAC. Usually it's done by an investor who's well known in the industry and is quite well trusted by the industry, because you're essentially asking a whole lot of people to just write me a blank check. Because at the time of me asking you for this money, at the time of my SPAC IPOing, I cannot reveal to you which company I'm going to be purchasing with this money. You're giving me money without knowing what it's going to be used for. You know that I will be using it to buy a company. You don't know which one yet. SPACs in the past have been started by Shamat and Bill Ackman. Bill Ackman, used to be a activist investor. He bought a whole lot of shares in Wendy's in the mid-2000s and forced them to sell to Tim Hortons. That's how he made a lot of his money. So Bill or Shamat, they start their own SPAC, and a whole lot of investors buy into this SPAC, buy the shares, and raise a whole lot of money. Now this money is put away in an interest-bearing bank account. That's it. It's locked away. The only time it can be touched is for acquiring the target company. Now, right after the IPO, a timer starts ticking off. The sponsor of the SPAC, the person who started off, doesn't have unlimited amount of time to kind of find that target. Because you took my money for the specific purpose of buying another one, you kind of have a timer on you to find that target company and close the deal. If I'm unable to close that deal in that time period, the trust fund is broken, all the money is given back to the investors, and I, as the founding partner, don't get nothing, nada, zilch. Now let's talk about identifying the target being the company that I'm going to be acquiring. At the time of my SPAC going public, I cannot reveal. Nobody can know what that acquisition company is going to be. You can't know that because the deal hasn't closed yet. Nobody can know it, I can't declare it. After my SPAC is public and I have raised the money, I have to first reveal the target company. And every investor who put money into my SPAC has a right essentially to say no. Like, you know what, I don't like you buying this company, use my veto and just get my money back and leave. Every investor has that veto, has that ability to say no and just take the money and leave. Here's what we have so far. Bill Ackman or Shamat, one of these big, well-known investors, have started their SPACs, taken that public, and raised a whole lot of money, and they have the cash ready to go acquire a company. Now let's talk about how it works from the other side of the transaction. the pros and cons that I have as a private company. Why should I consider SPACs versus IPOs for me to go public? Say I'm Virgin Galactic. I'm Richard Branson. I'm looking to raise a whole lot of money, and my idea is it's a moonshot idea. It's literally taking people to space. It's going to be a long-term bet. That means I need a lot of money for a long period of time. Typically, if I go the IPO route, there's a whole lot of scrutiny, a whole lot of financial metrics that my company needs to exhibit and exhibit good performance on in order for my stock to be considered a good investment. But as a moonshot idea company, I don't have that. So an IPO may not really work for me. Now, before we go into the pros and cons of SPAC, I just want to do a quick refresher on how IPOs actually work so that you can understand the contrast between them. So let's talk about IPOs for a quick second, okay? The whole point of the decision between SPACs and IPOs, both of those are vehicles for me to go public. I want to become a publicly listed company because I want to raise money. I can raise it from private investors or public investors, retail investors, people like you and I can buy stocks. So for me to go the IPO route, I would first need to call up the SEC and say, hey, I want to become a public company. As soon as I do that, I have to identify a banker. Bankers will start calling me up saying, hey, okay, I can sell your stocks. I can sell your stocks. I can sell your stocks. Just like at a wedding, you send people to save the date in mail. Hey, please save the date and come to our wedding. But you also send in an RSVP card that says, hey, please call us or email us and tell us that you will be attending and how many people will be attending. You want to know that because you want to know exactly how many people will show up to your wedding. Otherwise, I'll be getting married in like an empty room. IPOs are the same thing. Right after I launch the date of the IPO, the date is the only thing that's set. After that, I have to contract with the banker who will underwrite and do the work of pre-selling my IPO, calling up a whole lot of investors and saying, who wants to commit to buying my shares the day they IPO? Here's the kicker. Part of this is a whole lot of due diligence from the bank and all that stuff, but also I have to go like on a roadshow, literally be selling my product and idea and the validation of my business to every big money investor in the market. And then once I pitch to all these big money investors, they'll send me bids like, hey, I'll buy 50,000 shares at this price. I'll buy 100,000 shares at this price. And essentially, my stock price is decided by the lowest bidder. A whole lot of work, a whole lot of scrutiny, a whole lot of misalignment on how my company acts and where my company is. That's an IPO. Now let's contrast it with SPACs. Somebody from a SPAC model has already done the work of going public. They've already gone through all that roadshow and got investors, they all aligned, got the money ready. Instead of me dealing and negotiating and doing a Dutch auction with dozens and dozens of investors, in SPAC, I'm just dealing with one person, Bill Ackman or Shamat, one of these guys. Now I can negotiate my price up, I can negotiate my price down. It's a negotiation. As part of this negotiation, I can know exactly what my share price is going to be. So Virgin Galactic, it was like, hey, you'll go public at $10 a share. So I know how much money I'm going to be raising. So I have more certainty on my price, I have more control on my price, and have less of a hassle because I'm negotiating with one person instead of dozens of them. And I can go with the highest bidder SPAC, right? If Bill and Shamat are bidding for their SPACs are bidding to take me public, I can kind of find a better deal, right? I can go up in price. On IPO side, I have to go with the lowest bidder who will take the most amount of shares. As a result, because there's no roadshow and all that stuff, going the SPAC route can be quicker. So now let's talk about the cons. The not so rosy aspects of going the SPAC route. The company, me, Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson, may end up paying more in fees going the SPAC route than I may be paying the IPO route. An IPO, banks take from 1 to 7% of what I raise. Most of them go with the 7%. Nobody takes less than that. So on the SPAC side, bankers take not 7, but 5.5%. So on paper, it seems lower, but not really, because in most cases, the sponsor of that SPAC, Bill or Shamat, they get 20% of the stocks, my stocks, for essentially free. And who has to bear the cost of giving them 20% of the stock for free? I have to bear that cost. So if you bake that in, it's 5.5% to the bank plus about 20% that I have to give to these guys. So the second, more important criteria is that the SPAC takes me public and now I'm the one being listed on the stock market, okay? Day one, shares start at $10 a share. Virgin Galactic, that's what happened, $10 a share. So at the end of that day, they were trading at 2022. At some point, they were going to get 30 something also. If there is a huge difference between the starting share price and what it ends up being, the SPAC has clauses in there, warrants that they sell to the investors, warrants to buy more of my stock at that initial IPO price of $10. That means I'm giving away more money than I initially planned for and imagined. That means I'm raising even less money. Another one, the market may not like me as a company even after all that. Think about it this way. I didn't go the IPO route because I know I'm not perfect fit for the stock market. That means I don't have the quality revenue numbers and all those other things that retail investors look for from a publicly traded company. So if you ram me through to the stock market another way, my stock can start trading a lot lower than what it initially started off as. Even today, the companies that went public using SPACs in 2019 are doing a lot worse than the companies that went public using SPACs in 2020. It can result in lackluster performance in the stock market. So, in conclusion, I know that was a lot to handle. Let me just summarize it for you guys. SPACs are literally companies that have gone public and raised a whole lot of money with the sole purpose of acquiring another company and taking that other company public. Okay? The amount of money a SPAC raises all comes down to the founding partner and how trustworthy the market believes that founding partner, the sponsor, to be. Companies like Virgin Galactic and DraftKings have used them. There are always pros and cons between taking the IPO route or the SPAC route for a company that's trying to go public and become a publicly traded company. You have to evaluate all of them, and some of the pros are like it's faster, it's easier to deal with one or two investors versus a whole roadshow of them, and I have a lot more certainty in the price that I'm getting. I'm being bought out at X price for X number of shares, somebody just buying me out. Hope you found this video useful and informative. If you did, I'd really appreciate if you could like and subscribe to it. It really helps us stay motivated in making more and more of these. If you have any other company that you'd like us focusing on and covering, comment them at me in the section below. And if you think of someone else who might enjoy the video as well or might feel like learning about these, really appreciate if you could just forward it along to them. Your support means a lot. Thank you. This is Deepak Devjani signing off. I'll see you next time. Bye.